All right, get ready to dive deep into XPath, the engine behind web automation. You know the basics, but we're going beyond that, especially when it comes to sites like Mintra.
Exactly. We're going to make your automation scripts super reliable so they work even when those websites change things up.
Let's start with the search bar. It's something we all use. Our script needs to find it reliably every time, right?
Right. But using a simple XPath based on the exact class name of that search bar, well, that's a little risky.
Risky, how so?
Because if Mintra decides to even slightly tweak their website code, boom, your script breaks.
Ah, I see. So it's like a house of cards.
Yeah, kinda. Those absolute XPaths where you map the entire path from the top of the HTML, they're fragile. One change and the whole thing falls apart.
So it's a smarter way to do it.
Think landmarks, relative XPaths.
Yeah.
You start from a point you know is solid and use the relationships between elements to find what you need.
So instead of saying third door on the left, then up the stairs, second element on the right, it's more like find the giant red button, then look for the text box next to it.
Exactly. And one of the best tools for these flexible relative XPaths, the contains function. It's a lifesaver when element IDs or class names change just a bit.
You give me an example.
Let's say that search bar's class name goes from desktop search bar to Mintra desktop search bar. With contains, you're targeting just search bar.
Ah, so no matter what comes before or after in the class name, the XPath still finds it, as long as it contains search bar. That's really smart.
It is. And it works with other attributes too, like the text inside an element, perfect for buttons that change their text after you click them.
Like those add to cart buttons that turn into added.
Yeah.
I've had scripts totally break because of that.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But using contains text,
Yeah.
add, your XPath will find it no matter what the full text says.
So we're zeroing in on that unchanging part of the text. Clever. I'm starting to get how much more robust this makes my scripts.
Now let's take it up a level. You've found the add to cart button, but now you need the product name, which is somewhere else entirely in the code. This is where understanding the DOM, that's the document object model, really helps.
Oh, the DOM. It's like the blueprint of the web page, right? I've heard that term thrown around.
It is. It's hierarchical elements within elements, kind of like a family tree.
So is that how we can jump from that button to the product name, even if they're far apart in the HTML?
Precisely. XPath gives us tools to navigate those relationships. Say you found that add to cart button, but the product name is higher up in the DOM tree. You can use 2 dots to go up to the button's parent element.
Oh, like going up the family tree. And keep going up until we find the element that contains the product name.
Exactly, you got it. And then you can use to look within that ancestor's children for the specific product name element.
Wow, this is pretty powerful. Being able to move around the DOM like this,
Yeah.
it's like having a secret map.
You're getting it. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's more like how to navigate between elements that are siblings or how to handle situations where the HTML structure is a bit unpredictable.
Okay, I'm ready for more. What about when we need to grab information from elements that are right next to each other, like product titles and prices in a list?
That's where siblings come in. Remember how we talked about the DOM as a family tree? Well, elements at the same level under the same parent element are like siblings.
Gotcha. So if I've got the product title, how do I tell my script to jump over to the price right next to it in the HTML?
We use the following sibling.access. So imagine your product title is in an H2 tag and the price is in a span tag right after. The XPath would look something like this. H2 text, product name following dash sibling.span.
Okay, let me break that down. We're saying find the H2 with the text product name, then go to the next sibling, which is a span. That's surprisingly easy to understand.
It is, and super powerful for getting data from lists and tables, especially on a site like Mintra.
Now, what about when the website to HTML is, well, a little messy? What if the developers change the tags they're using, like switching a button from a button to a div? Can XPath handle that?
It can, and that's where the wildcard, the asterisk, comes in. Think of it like a universal key that fits any tag.
Oh, interesting. So I don't need to specify if it's a button, div, or span.
Nope. You just use an XPath will find the element, regardless of what tag it is. Real handy when you're not sure what those developers have been up to.
So if I was targeting an add to cart button, but wasn't sure if it was still a button element, could I use something like contains text add to cart?
You got it. That'll find any element with that text no matter the tag. Adds a lot of robustness to your automation, especially with sites that have, shall we say, interesting HTML.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
But I do remember reading that while the wildcard is useful, it's best to use more specific XPaths when you can. Why is that?
Great question. It comes down to speed. With a wildcard, your tool has to scan the entire DOM, every element to find what you want. If you know the exact type of element, it's way faster to tell the tool to just look at those.
So it's like the wildcard gives you flexibility, but sometimes you sacrifice speed for it. You got to know when to use each.
Exactly. Now, remember, XPath is awesome, but it's not the only tool. Sometimes other locators are better.
Right, like using by.a. If an element has a unique ID, that's not going to change.
Exactly. Or by.name, if there's a reliable name attribute. And don't forget about CSS selectors, especially if speed is critical.
So it's about knowing the strengths of each tool and using the best one for the job.
Absolutely. Being a web automation expert isn't just about knowing XPath. It's about picking the right tool for the situation. And speaking of knowing what to use when, there's one more key concept.
Oh, what's that?
Dynamic versus stable attributes. Some things on a web page are always changing IDs that get generated automatically, class names that are session-based, stuff like that.
So if we build our XPaths around those, our scripts will break easily.
You bet. It's like building on sand. But stable attributes, those are rock solid, things that aren't likely to change, perfect for our XPaths.
Like what? Give me some examples.
The element's tag name is usually pretty stable. Also, area labels, placeholder text, roles, those tend to stay the same.
So we have to be really aware of which attributes are going to stick around and which ones might disappear or change, right?
Yeah.
That's how we build XPaths that can handle the constant changes on websites.
You got it. And as we wrap up our deep dive into XPath, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Ooh, I like a challenge. What is it?
Think about the sites you use every day. What tasks are you doing manually that you could maybe automate with XPath?
That's a good one. Like filling out those long forms, or maybe keeping an eye on price changes for something I want to buy on Mintra.
See, the possibilities are huge. And as you start playing around with it, you'll actually learn a lot more about how web pages work.
It's like learning a new language, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly you're not just browsing the web, you're really understanding it.
I love that. And the more you practice, the more creative you can get with XPath, solving problems and making things more efficient.
This deep dive has been amazing. My brain's already buzzing with ideas for using XPath in my own work.
Glad to hear it. Remember, learning never stops. There's always something new to discover and new ways to improve your skills.
So everyone listening, keep experimenting, keep pushing the limits. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to discover the next big automation trick.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Happy automating.
Keep diving deep. It's not just about the code, it's about thinking differently, right? Like, how can I use this to make my life easier, my work faster?
Yeah. Automation frees you up, you know? Less busy work, more time for the stuff that actually needs the human brain.
Exactly. Spend less time on those boring, repetitive tasks and more time on being creative, actually thinking.
That's the goal.
So, like, maybe I could use XPath to automate filling out those online forms I have to do for work. Or set up something to watch for price drops on Mintra, like we were talking about.
There you go. You're getting it. And honestly, the more you play around with XPath, the more you'll understand how websites are built, the structure behind it all.
It really is like learning a language, isn't it? Instead of just looking at a web page, I'm actually starting to understand it.
I love that analogy. And the more fluent you get, the more you can do. It's amazing what you can solve with XPath once you really get it.
Well, this deep dive has been a game changer for me. I'm already thinking about all the things I can try with XPath now.
That's what I like to hear. And the best part is, the learning never stops. There's always a new challenge, a new trick to learn.
So for everyone listening, keep experimenting. Don't be afraid to break things. Try new things. You never know what you might discover.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to come up with the next big automation technique that blows everyone away.
That's a great thought to end on. To all our listeners, happy automating. Keep diving deep.